A hard-drinking loudmouth spawn of hell is the world's only hope in this hot take of Hellboy.
They warned us that something was coming.
If there is ever an end in this forever war, it will be because of you and your strong right hand.
I'm on your side!
Sorry, my bad.
We're the line in the sand. We fight against the forces of darkness.
This is it.
Were you expecting a sign that says secret headquarters?
Oi. I need some ID, love.
Are you serious?
You made me a damn weapon. I just wanted to help you become the best you.
Some dads get their kids Legos.
Haven't we got to be saving the world or something?
Does it do anything special?
Yeah. It smashes things real good.
You are mankind's best and only hope.
I thought we were supposed to be fighting monsters, not working with them.
Who you calling monster, pal? You look in the mirror recently?
He's an asshole.
Sorry! I interrupt!
On the contrary, you've arrived just in time.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga and editor-in-chief of dailygeekery.com, with a new hot take on the reboot of the Hellboy franchise. Now, for those of you who don't know, hot takes are different from reviews in the sense that when I do a review of a movie, I really like to get down and dirty and kind of break it down and analyze it. Hot takes are more just kind of general impressions from watching the movie one time and, just kind of what I thought of it. They're a little bit scatterbrained, but they're just meant to give you a general impression of whether or not I like the movie and whether or not I would recommend you see it. So if your tastes are kind of similar to mine, you might want to watch this and find out a little bit about the movie. So basically, the most recent incarnation of Hellboy, Hellboy 2019, is a kind of soft reboot / remake of the Hellboy franchise. It's directed by Neil Marshall. And it's basically a really bad movie. Maybe that's being a little bit harsh. It was a bad movie compared to the other Hellboy movies, which I didn't much care for either, even though I thought they were a lot... the Guillermo del Toro Hellboys were a lot more kind of in line with the source material. And this Hellboy was kind of a little bit jokier, a little bit... kind of inconsistent in its tone. But it basically, this started off as a direct sequel to Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. And it was kind of spearheaded by the creator of the source material, artist Mike Mignola, and this other guy named Andrew Cosby. And basically they came up with this idea called Hellboy, Rise of the Blood Queen. And they went to, kind of develop the story. And Guillermo del Toro kind of, decided to pass on it for whatever reason. And because del Toro was no longer involved, the actor who played Hellboy in his movies, Ron Perlman, decided to bow out as well because he didn't want to do a Hellboy movie without del Toro's involvement. So basically the producers at that point were like, well, so since it's not going to be a direct sequel because no one from the other two movies is involved, let's just, hire a new guy for the role of Hellboy, hire a new director, and reboot it. And it's weird because the movie doesn't really feel like a reboot. Like, it could actually just be like a carry-on from the previous films. For the most part, there are a few elements in it that kind of make it clear that, it doesn't have a real strong connection to the previous movies. But, that's neither here nor there. It's just kind of doing its own thing. One of the things I want to talk about is director Neil Marshall, just for a minute, because I'm actually kind of a fan of this guy, and I was surprised that this movie turned out quite as bad as it did, at least in my opinion. So Marshall, he's kind of been around for a while. He did this movie called Dog Soldiers as his first movie, and it's basically soldiers versus werewolves. It's the kind of thing I first saw on like Cinemax or HBO late at night one night, and it's just kind of like a goofy horror movie. But then he made a movie called The Descent, which is about a group of female kind of spelunkers, rock climbers, who go down and get lost in this cave. And as they're trying to find their way out of the cave, they're being hunted by these kind of cave-dwelling creatures. And it's actually a really good horror movie. I definitely recommend you check that out if you haven't seen it. But then he made a movie called Doomsday, which is one of my guilty pleasures. Doomsday is kind of like Escape from New York meets Mad Max with a female Snake Plissken in the lead. So if you can imagine Kurt Russell's Snake Plissken, but as a super hot babe played by Roma Mitra, I think her name is. That's basically Doomsday. It is a crazy, stupid, bizarre, balls to the wall film, and if you haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend that you do that. But he kind of came on as the director of this, and his sensibilities, I think, were pretty in line with what Hellboy should be. Like, he's got a good sense of humor, he's also got a good sense of horror, and he can direct action. So, things were looking good going into production for this movie. But there were lots of behind-the-scenes shenanigans going on, which I think really affected the final kind of take on this. So basically, there were two producers on this film named Lawrence Gordon and Lloyd Levin, who apparently were just all up in Marshall's grill from beginning to end. They fired his cinematographer, this guy that he collaborated with for a long time, and Marshall, of course, didn't like that. And a lot of reports came from the set that basically Levin in particular was rewriting the script and telling the actors during rehearsals to do different lines and giving them conflicting directions from Marshall. And so the actors got frustrated not knowing who they were supposed to be listening to, the producer or the director. The producer was constantly undermining the director. And in fact, David Harbour, who plays Hellboy, who you might know from the Stranger Things series as the sheriff, he basically got so frustrated that he walked off set and he'd refused to do multiple takes because, he didn't know how he was supposed to be playing the scene. And even, other actors like Ian McShane just took to writing their own lines because the script was always in flux. They never knew what they were going to be saying from scene to scene. So basically, there was a lot of conflict behind the scenes. And I think for as much drama as was going on, they were actually able to kind of pull together a decent enough story. There are some good set pieces in this Hellboy film, but they're so disjointed and they don't really connect in a way that's entertaining. I felt like it was extremely vulgar, unnecessarily so, and it just kind of meandered. It got boring after a while, actually. And the crew that Hellboy hooks up with, he's got like this female psychic medium that he somehow knew, and she teams up with him, and she seems kind of worthless for the most part, but then all of a sudden at the end she's a highly trained combatant who's fighting demons, and you don't get much development with her. And then you have Daniel Day Kim, who's like this government agent who's secretly a were-panther or were-cougar or something like that. It's very strange. I feel like this movie was just such a mishmash of ideas. It was hard for them to kind of settle on one and carry it through to the end. The Del Toro movies were undoubtedly better than this one. And if you're a fan of those Del Toro Hellboy movies, I can guarantee that you're going to loathe this Hellboy reboot. And it's funny because this Hellboy reboot was actually based on like 3 separate story arcs from the comics, and they just kind of took all 3 of them and mushed them together in a ball and like threw it on the wall and to see what stuck. And for the most part, I would think I think I'd have to say that oddly enough, Mia Jovovich, however you pronounce her name, the actress from The Fifth Element and the Resident Evil stuff, she actually was probably the best part about this movie. She played the villain. She was an evil witch. She didn't really have a lot to do in the film, but when she was on screen, she just felt like a very consistent, stable character. And you kind of remembered, oh, okay, this is supposed to be the main plot of the movie. And throughout the film, Hellboy is kind of, met with distrust because even though he saved the world numerous times, all these people think that he's going to be the guy who brings about the apocalypse with this witch's help. So, there's that kind of going through, but that plot thread kind of bounces around so much that it just makes the movie feel more disjointed than it should be. And even though these things affect Hellboy in the story, they don't ever really seem to be consistent, because one minute he'll be all moody about being different from humanity and being expected to save humanity, and then the next minute he'll be back to kind of like his joking devil may care ways. So I feel like this movie was definitely very uneven. I felt like it started off kind of entertaining, but it got pretty boring towards the end. Like I kind of checked out at a certain point because I just didn't care what was happening. And it could have been better. And I think the character of Hellboy could have been handled in a much more entertaining and convincing way. So would I recommend Hellboy, the 2019 reboot? I would not recommend it. I think you can just watch the 2 Del Toro movies that came before and be happy with those. This one can easily be missed, and because it was a failure at the box office, I think it made $46 million and its budget was like $50 million. So big flop on that one. Didn't make its money back. I think that this reboot is dead in the water, and if there is a new Hellboy movie down the road, it's going to be a new reboot. So you can probably skip this one and not have to worry about it, because this version of Hellboy is dead as a doornail. All right, guys, so I hope you like this hot take on Hellboy. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me or not. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to do so, because I'll be doing more of these, and plus I also put out other great things on my channel like podcasts and movie news and TV news and stuff like that. And also check me out on Twitter at Matthew Kadish and all the other socials. And I will see you guys on the next one. Later.